Hello, everybody. It's Mandy Rae, and I am here with Sonia, and together we are for AsteriSofiaKairos, which I guess we call it a collective, yeah?
Collective.
Yes, an astrology collective, and there's so many wonderful ladies in this. And today, though, I'm with Sonia, and we are doing the 7th through the 14th of May of the year of 2025, which I can't believe it's here already. There's so much going on. It is, and some parts of it seemed like it dragged on in the very beginning of the year, and now it's just starting to speed up now that everything is going direct, except for Pluto, which we just went over in the week before this. So the 7th is Mercury meeting Chiron in Aries at 24 degrees. The 10th is Mercury entering Taurus. The 12th is the full moon in Scorpio. And Mercury square Pluto from Taurus to Aquarius. And so we've already gone over Mercury meeting Chiron. And just after that, Mercury's moving so fast, it enters Taurus. I'm very excited about that one.
Yeah.
So here we are on the 10th. Mercury enters Taurus at 12:15. That's universal time, right?
Yeah.
On the 12th, the full moon in Scorpio at 16:55. And so that would be 22 degrees of Scorpio, which if you have anything at 22 degrees of fixed signs, that would be for you. And the fixed people are getting it this week, aren't they? And then on that same day, not even an hour later, Mercury will square from 3 degrees of Taurus to 3 degrees of Aquarius, and Pluto just recently retrograde.
Yeah, it is the week for the fixed people, isn't it? We've got off, as a person with a lot of fixed placements that square each other, got off lightly for a little while, got flown under the radar for the beginning of the year. But yeah. That's
now
the way the planets move around, and sooner or later it's your time if you've got off lightly.
That's right.
Yeah, the fixed being Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. So they're all here. They all are.
Here they all are.
Mercury hasn't had much dignity in Aries, so even in Taurus, it's peregrine officially, which means it hasn't got much dignity, but it will have dignity in the first decan. So feels like maybe bringing Venus's message through.
Definitely, most definitely. Which I think Venus needs its message to be broadcast while it's in Aries.
And that full moon in Scorpio will be interesting, won't it? Because we were just talking last week about the Scorpio squaring Pluto, although it won't be by degree, but that's going to be. We just looked ahead at the card, and it's a card with the words that very much align with the Pluto message. So even though it's in a whole sign square with Pluto, I think it's going to be quite intense.
Very much so.
And then again, Mercury will be an exact square to Pluto. So, yeah, Pluto themes.
That is correct.
So the first one that we're looking at is Mercury entering Taurus at 0 degrees. And as I said, Mercury hasn't had much dignity as he's moved through Aries, trying to assert himself through our thoughts and the way that we communicate. Maybe technology, might have struggled with technology during this time. Even I certainly did with the retrograde, and I haven't been able to get my camera working at all. And this recording is the first time my camera suddenly decided, okay, I'm going to work again for you. Just it was out of its shadow. And I literally did say last month that I was recording with Shauna, I did try some troubleshooting, and I was like, I'm not going to really try too hard while it's in shadow or it's retrograding. I'm going to try once it's free. And of course, once it's free, the first thing I tried to troubleshoot, even though I'd tried it before, and it works. So that's just Mercury retrograde in shadow for me. And suddenly the technology decides to work for you, and that's just how it is. You reset your computer, switch it on and off again, and suddenly it works. When trying that another time, it doesn't. So strange how that goes. And Mercury now entering this place where things are slower, and that's interesting for Mercury. That's why he doesn't have much dignity here, because this is Venus's palace, and it's slow and steady and fixed, and Mercury likes to move fast. He kind of zaps along, communicating and going from one thing to another, and both of his signs are what they call the double-bodied places. He lives in Gemini and Virgo, find the right words, and both of them, when I learned modern, they're both called mutable. When I moved to traditional, we call them double-bodied. And that made so much more sense. A double-bodied sign has two natures. You can see that in the glyphs. The Gemini has the double-bodied. Virgo has, Sagittarius has with the crossover, and so has Pisces. So you can literally see the double-bodiedness of it and understand how things are pulling in different directions. And that's what Mercury wants to do, be in different places, have two different thoughts at once, have two different ideas at once, and they might contrast. But in Taurus, there's one direction, and it's slow and steady and planning and maybe thoughtful. And it's this lush, beautiful garden of Venus where beauty and peace and harmony reign. And Mercury's here with all these ideas. But what if we did it like this? And what if we... Let's talk about that, and you go to this party and there's somebody in the corner who's entertaining everybody. And that's kind of how I see Mercury.
Oh, yeah.
The joker at the party, the entertainer coming through. And also he's representing money and exchange and business and all of those things that we do kind of for work, I suppose, those business meetings. And again, they might take on a slower, steadier nature in this fixed place. So you might find that slowing down, but also getting more thoughtful with the planning. So it's a good time to make those plans while Mercury is here. That's the way I see it. That's what Taurus wants to do, is plan and bring people together. So it's great to kind of move into where the planets are and what they want to do, because Mercury has to operate in a Venusian way now while Venus is in charge. And we see Venus is separating from Neptune now. So she's coming away from that rose-tinted illusions, delusions. And maybe she's getting a bit more clear on what her Aries mission is. So maybe that's coming across to Mercury, and maybe Mercury is able to enact it for us and tell us, okay, communicate it to us. Mercury can be the herald or the messenger. And maybe he can bring it through, tell us where we're going, but also support us in our work of getting it through, like helping you get that spreadsheet done, or helping you to, I don't know, whatever you're working on, making your plans. It's not time to plan for the year ahead, but it's a good time to review those plans and have a look at them, maybe. It's going to be forming that square with Mars and Pluto. Sort of everything moving into Taurus is going to be at that tension point. We sometimes call it the bending. It's kind of a crisis point where you've got the T-square, but Mars is moving away from that. So it hasn't got the tension that it had when Mars was at the early degrees of Leo. So it's more of a whole sign square now. The square is with Pluto that's retrograding back into it. So as Mercury reaches 3 degrees, that will get more tense. And I think we'll look at that later in the week as they move into the exactness. We also see Mercury getting closer to the sun. So at the moment, he's free from the sun's rays, but he will be moving closer to the sun, and that will mean he'll start to be affected by the sun's rays. He starts to get burnt up. I don't think he meets the sun until they get to Gemini, which is great for Mercury because he'll then be in his chariot and protected from the sun's rays when they meet in Gemini. But he'll get sunburn and sunstroke, if you think of it that way. And that affects how he functions. He'll slow down and struggle. So he's already slowed down by being in Taurus, but he will start to, as he gets within 15 degrees of the sun, he'll get less effective. And of course, that will affect the planets in his signs. So we see Jupiter is already in Gemini. So Jupiter's been doing better while Mercury's been doing better. And especially while Mercury's in that first decan and out from under the sun's rays. Jupiter in Gemini is doing well and getting all the data through to us. And maybe it's a bit clearer, you might have noticed. But once Mercury gets closer to that sun, that might start to get a bit more muddled. The moon in Libra I was looking at, and I was thinking maybe that's like lichen girding for this ingress, because Mercury's in Venus's sign and the moon is in Venus's sign. So there's like that sympathy as well between these planets that are all in Venus's sign. Mercury, the sun, Uranus as well, that's so disruptive but also possibly awakening, and the moon. So although they can't see each other, Venus is opposite her sign, but there's a sympathy there that we can't see. It's kind of like a secret aspect, but a sympathy that's going on where they're working towards the same ends. They've got the same goals. So the peace and harmony and balance and justice that the moon is seeking in Libra now, Mercury's like supportive of those goals, and the moon is supportive of Mercury's goals right now. Not for long. The moon isn't there for very long, like literally just possibly not even hours. This is at 1:15 on the 10th of May, British summertime, so it would be 12:15 in universal time, so you'd need to adapt it. It'd probably be overnight in America. So maybe by the time you're day starts, the moon will have moved. But it's a good start to the day anyway, a good early morning start to have that light and girding. It's like a little wink from the universe.
I like that. I like Mercury and Taurus as well. I feel like it can really help center you, especially after the I think Mercury in Aries is, air just feeds fire, so it can be quite busy and frenetic to a certain extent. So when it moves into Taurus, it does feel a little more grounded. And I also like the yod there with Saturn, Uranus, and the moon and the North Node, I guess, too. It's the finger of God, and it really it's brief because the moon does move so fast, but there's something about peace and love and beauty and balance that I think is coming in here, and that fits very well with Mercury and Taurus too.
Yeah, and I often say, like, the ingress holds the story of the transit of Mercury through. So even though it's very brief, is telling us the story of that transit. So even though Mercury will move out of that first decan and go under those beams, it will hold this energy. And like you say, that yod as well, that's holding that energy of that Libra moon, and that little like and girding bit, that's going to linger. That's going to stay as the story and just sustain Mercury. Maybe when things get tougher, he's going to hold on to that, like the honeymoon period of a marriage, when you hold on to that start of a romance, and it's so wonderful. And even when things get rocky, you kind of hold on to when it was so good. That's kind of maybe what Mercury's journey is going to get like through Taurus. When it gets a little bit harder, he's going to hold on to, but it was so lovely at the start, that Taurian dream.
I agree.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I should whisper this full moon. The full moon. It feels like a deep dive full moon. The 12th of May, 2025, at 7:55. That is British Standard Time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'll be
5:55. So it's 4:55 Universal Time.
And I think that might be around middle of the day in at least central US where I am. So this full moon kind of surprised me because it's directly on my sun degree at 22 degrees of Scorpio. I love the Wild Way card here by Nicola Allen, and it's transformation. And that is the third decan of Scorpio. It is. I like how you have these keywords in the bottom corner: the unfulfilled desires, loss and decay, decomposition, which is essential for life to keep moving on. We have to, no matter on the earth is created or destroyed, it is just transformed, and that is what the third decan of Scorpio really holds, that wisdom of transformation. And I think one of the things with this full moon that stood out so much to me is that the sun is getting very close to its conjunction with Uranus. So it's reflecting the light back of change anyway, change and revolution and maybe unexpected events. But as Uranus gets more towards the later degrees of Taurus, I feel like the shocking part of it is less present, and it's more the revolution, the freedom that comes with Uranus and Taurus. So there is this freedom from being stuck in your maybe same value system that you've had for a long time. And it's new values, and it is a liberation. And when you have a full moon in the third decan of Scorpio, there is a lot of that swamp water. It's like lightning hitting a swamp. It's going to bring stuff up that hasn't been brought up for a long time. So I think that it's going to maybe expose some things, and that could be a little uncomfortable. The Scorpio moon is, you were just saying how much you love Scorpio moons, right, Sonia? Yeah. That's fall, correct? It's in fall. Yeah. I get my detriments and my falls confused, and that's okay, by the way. If you are doing astrology and you can't call out things immediately, but that's a very Scorpio thing, is just to say, I don't care what you think. This is what I'm going to do. It is ruled by Mars, but the moon doesn't, it doesn't really want to dive deep and look under the rock. The moon likes to feel safe. And Scorpio is really not exactly a safe sign, being Mars ruled. So a full moon here reflecting the light of the sun and Uranus coming together is more going to uncover things that need to be composted. And maybe it's like when you have to turn the compost over, if you've ever composted anything, you have to eventually go out there and turn it, or it doesn't compost correctly. And this is like turning the compost this full moon, I think. But empowerment is also a good word for Scorpio in its highest form. I mean, you can see that with is that a crane bird?
I hadn't heard of this bird before. It's a cormorant. Cormorant.
Huh. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
But yeah, it's a beautiful bird, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it just kind of it looks like freedom to me, even though the word is transformation. And so it's just, yes, it may not be comfortable to shine a light into this dark area, but it's definitely going to do a lot for freeing us up from things that hold us back. Yeah, I think breaking the chains may be a good way to say that.
Yeah, I wonder.
But it's worth noting, I think, that Mars is in Leo, being the ruler of it, at 11 degrees. And I mean, there's no real aspects to Mars, but this is square by sign and square to Pluto by sign. So that uncomfortable nature does seem to come up no matter how I look at the chart.
Yeah, it's like that T-square is still echoing. It's not exact anymore, which is a relief, but it's like echoes of it. And then we've got the Mercury Pluto square is like going to be exact within the hour almost that we look at next.
I think that's all I have to say about the full moon. It feels very almost easy to read. Like this is going to be a moment in which we really have to dig deep in order to empower ourselves and change something that we need to change.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that 26 is where the fixed star Algol which has caused trouble. I mean, that was when Donald Trump, the shooting happened.
I think it was Mars Uranus, wasn't it? I think Mars hit Uranus during that time.
I really have to make a note of that chart, really, because I keep referring quite often when the moon, the sun, anything activates Uranus. That's, because Uranus has been sitting on that degree for quite some time. And ask me why I know because it's my ascendant. So I've kind of like, I looked ahead and was like, do I need to worry about this? But actually, I've been fine.
Yeah.
It hasn't been a problem, but the lunation's coming up with it. It's like, okay, I'm going to stay safe. There's times when you just take a little bit of extra care. Yeah, I won't go near anywhere that's potentially dangerous around that time. And I advise anybody with planets or angles around that degree to stay safe around this time too. Just take a little bit of extra care because it is one of the most challenging stars. But it can also be very protective. If you've got that in your chart, it can be very protective and very creative as well. It can really dig into those depths, that transformational depth of that Scorpio decan, or the polarity with it. It really goes where other stars don't. But the co-rulers of this decan, so we can see that we've got Venus, but it's also the moon. That's maybe another reason why I kind of love it, that the moon goes on this journey through the Scorpio decan, so you can really track her progress as she rises up from her fall and then reaches the last decan where she's ruling. So it's kind of like the decan where she rises again. Up from out of her fall, she kind of gets her mojo back. The sun ruling the middle one. Mars is the first one where she's really low, and then Mars has to... I've kind of got this little story in my head about how the moon progresses through Scorpio. So it's up to Mars to kind of battle to save her, and then the sun shines this light on what the problems are for her and rescues her in this dual distillation that Austin Coppock talks about. Like they merge, the luminaries sort of have to come together and raise her up, and then she rules the final decan. So that's my little decan story for the moon rising up through the decans of Scorpio. So it's her greatest battle place, but she rises up every time. Kira Ryberg calls it nostalgia, and maybe that's another reason why I love it. And Austin Coppock calls it the apple. So again, that Adam and Eve story when we talked about Aries and strife and discord, and this is the apple. So again, that twang of discord coming into the Garden of Eden. And in tarot, the correspondence is the Seven of Cups. So again, it's that multitude of choices, and everything isn't quite what it seems, and there's a difficulty there, and it's Nicola Allen that gives us those keywords that comes with the card, so they're really helpful. And the story that comes with this bird is that this cormorant is possessed with obsession. He's been diving to depths uncharted and returning to the surface with no food, barely a sardine, and is at the top there drying out his wings and wondering what could have been. He's like feeling nostalgic. So instead of grasping onto this, he releases those hungry ghosts, and he is transformed from this defeated and bedraggled seabird, he turns into a creature who's both wistful and wise. And he decides that he can start trying fishing tomorrow in a different spot. And he's asking us, do we need to give up something that just cannot be? Something that's just not working, that we need to move on from. So we're reminded that this often creates space for an alternative and a much better option to emerge. So that's kind of like the lesson of this decan and this place. And a full moon will always illuminate and shine a light on that. So something like that, something that's just not working, is coming up for you at this time. It's really asking you to think about alternatives and what you need to let go of now in order to move on. That idea of one door closing and another opening. And you have to let go before you can move on. Like the wisdom of when you finish the boat journey, you can't keep the boat with you once you get to shore. You've got to step out the boat, carry on your land journey. Don't carry the boat with you. That thing of on your journey, you've got to let go. You might love the boat, you might have loved the journey, but you've got to let go of that boat and continue on your land journey.
Yeah, and the moon is sextile the South Node, which is even, I think, more indicative of what do you need to get rid of? I mean, Scorpio and Virgo both are signs that have some element of purging, I think, with it. Like we brought up before, I think somehow we said purging, and this does feel like a purging moment in order to free yourself up, make space.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Stay safe if you've got those late Scorpio or Taurus. And again, it's the fixed, so also Leo and Aquarius. It's the late degrees this time rather than the early ones that have been getting all the Pluto bashing. But yeah, I think anywhere with fixed signs will be feeling it this week. And then right after this full moon, like within the hour, we've got the Pluto squaring Mercury. So Mercury there at 3 degrees of Taurus, and Pluto in its retrograde journey, but still at 3 degrees. And yeah, it's kind of like the first aspect from retrograde Pluto, I think, that we're talking about, is it? And it's interesting, whereas Mercury is the herald. After the moon, Mercury is the closest planet that we have. And Mercury is known as being able to access the underworld. Mercury can go across those borders, like above and below. He's known as a psychopomp. So it's interesting that Mercury can go into these places. Pluto is the lord of the underworld, and Mercury's familiar there. When Mercury is retrograde and invisible, we often think that he's traveling that underworld journey, and so does Venus when she's retrograde as well. So it's interesting that he's well placed to bring that message through, maybe a call to action or what's needed in terms of those shadows that were being shown on this retrograde journey from Pluto.
Feels very much like shedding of skin this day. It's like almost like a snake going, oh, I've got to shed this skin.
Yeah.
And even the Mercury, Pluto, and Mercury in Taurus. I just like to think of Taurus as such a personal sign, and Pluto and Aquarius such a collective sign. There does seem to be some sense of needing to integrate things that are happening in the outer world with our inner world.
Yes, it's those thoughts, like Mercury Pluto quite often is like a deep probing mind, having deep insight into everything that's going on emotionally, like our psyche and everything. Quite often you might see it in psychologists or criminologists or something, like really going deep into what's going on in the psyche. So yeah, maybe
Investigative.
Rationalizing everything that's been going on and giving us a chance, like you say, to really integrate that. And the shadow side can be those mental struggles and obsessions and fears that can become overwhelming. Makes me think of like the tarot card of the 9 of Swords with the dark night of the soul, isn't it? When you really battle and you realize that they're really your own thoughts that you're battling. If you're getting control of your mind, you've won that battle.
Venus still at 8 degrees. Yeah, this week feels it's a full moon, and there's just something that seems maybe a little quiet about it. Maybe it's just that Pluto is still very stationary, even though it is retrograde. But I guess the loudest part of it is the Mercury square Pluto and maybe Mars and Leo. Mars and Leo is always loud, but it does feel very introspective. I think maybe that's what I'm picking up on. Maybe not necessarily quiet, but super introspective here.
Yeah, because that Mars and Leo moving into a trine with Venus. So that's interesting because they're often thought of as a pair representing the feminine and male archetypes, and in a fire sign where one's all about the individuation and the self, and then Leo is how are you shining, how are you representing yourself, and then Pluto showing us the dark side of the collective, and Neptune there sort of confusing everything. I mean, I spoke with Shauna about like this soup where everything's getting thrown into a pot and the heat's getting turned up. It's kind of an analogy that Rebecca Gordon's, and it just feels like that there's so much going on there, and it's like, what is going to emerge from all of this?
Yeah, I agree. And I also think Mercury squaring Pluto may be something we have to declare, with our voice too. So I would put this week as fairly tense in my book. It's a little tense.
Yeah. Because these fixed signs as well, they're meant to sustain. They don't like change necessarily. And we've got Uranus there being activated by this full moon. And that can bring disruptive change. I always hope for like insights is my favorite word for Uranus. It's like, it will bring new insights and like a little bit of a rebellion and a pull to freedom. It will show you where you can liberate yourself. But yeah, with them coming into that square, that it's a whole sign square, and it will be a trine once it moves to Pluto. Uranus will suddenly pick up speed and move over to Gemini and form that trine. It just feels like we're anticipating that as well. Once Uranus starts moving off that 26, it starts moving quite fast. But it just seems stuck there for a bit with Algol. It seems quite happy there for a moment. Showing the dark side of things.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, not that the Uranus archetype, it enjoys shaking things up, but I think having it been at that degree for a long time, it feels less chaotic than it did before and more pushing ahead towards freeing yourself up from something. And oppression, at Algol being so, I don't like to use the word bad in astrology, but Algol being what it is, it's a little scary. Like when you read the mythology of Algol.
Yeah.
But Uranus is there like, yeah, do you see this? Do you see this in reality? And I think this full moon and the Mercury square Pluto is like, we have to acknowledge it. I think it's almost like it speaks for itself. It's almost like we've said everything there is to say about this, because when we get there, Mercury will let you know exactly what it wants to say because of the square to Pluto.
It will. Yeah, that's true. It's nice again that Mercury's still out from under the beams. That's the main thing. So it's to express that message. That's the most important thing, I suppose, to note there. Okay. So that's the end of the second week of May. So thank you so much, Mandy Rae from Ecstatic Astrology. Did we find a word? I remember thinking one was coming up and I've lost it now.
I like shedding.
Shedding, yes. Yeah.
Maybe it's shedding.
It really is, because there's so much Pluto going on there, isn't there, all through the week?
Yeah, and there's also an element of the Taurus in it, because Taurus is, it's the earth, and that's kind of what, a lot of animals do. So you do what you have to do to take care of yourself in Taurus.
Yes, shedding. And what would be an emoji for that, I wonder?
Yeah, a good question. Oh, man. Oh. Maybe just a little snake.
Yeah, a little snake. Snake shedding.
The little green snake, I think they have as the emojis.
So if you've done some shedding this week, comment with a little snake emoji and share your story, or don't. It's up to you, but we'll know if you share the snake that, there's been some shedding happening. If you've liked this, please remember to like, subscribe and comment. We do a happy dance. You can find us on Substack and YouTube for Ask AsteriSofiaKairos, and I also post on my channel, Celestial Astrology. We'll be back showing the 14th to the 1st of May. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.